So why did I get vaccinated? Well, for me, part of the answer to that, you have to understand who I am. I'm a person who feels deeply connected with the past, with history, with not just sort of in the big sense, but in the family sense too. And I feel this through my connections because I'm not just me. I am also a pastor. I am also an American. I am also a Christian. And it's those identities that link me to my past, and it's that past that leads me into the future. It's how I understand living into tradition. And see, my family's tradition has always been one of service. If you were to look at my grandparents' generation, okay, you would find that 3 of 4 of them served in the military during times of war. My dad then did 20 years in the military, a full career. You would look at them and you'd find that my dad is an Episcopal priest. One of my grandfathers was an Episcopal priest. They served their church in all sorts of tumultuous times. See, I feel connected, not just because of family, but I feel connected because of the communion of saints to all those folks who have sacrificed so much over all these years as Christians, as Americans, as people who love God. And it's those traditions I live into. See, what do I mean when I say that? Well, back in the 30s, when Nazism was threatening the existence of democracy, when Nazism was threatening the existence of the church, when Nazism was trying to stomp out God himself, my grandfather and grandmother stood up and heard the call from their country, the call from the church, the call from their God to put themselves at risk when their God, their country, their church said, "Let Nazis shoot at you so that we can be free." They heard that call. They made those sacrifices. And they survived unbelievable trauma. A few years later, country and church and God will make the same call of my other grandfather, and he will go to Korea. The same call will be heard by my dad, who will spend 20 years in the military. Similar calls are heard by every pastor everywhere. For me, at this moment, in this place, at this time, I'm hearing a very similar call. A call from my church, a call from my country, a call from my God. Not to get shot at by Nazis or communists, not to go to a foreign land I'd never been to before and put my life at risk. This call is so much easier. It's so much less. It's not these much harder calls that earlier generations had had. It's simply a call not to get shot at, but to get a couple of shots. And yes, maybe feel bad for a few days. And yes, maybe have a sore arm. But isn't that sacrifice so little to protect our church, to protect our country, to protect our neighbor? So for me, it was an easy decision because I can do something 1/100th as difficult as what my grandfathers, or my grandmother, or my dad did when their country, their God, and their church called on them. So for me, I heard that same call. And I went out and I did it. And I hope that you, whoever you are watching, if you hear that same call from your God, from your country, from your church, you would stand up with all those Americans and people from around the world who have gone out and done what is hard, what is uncomfortable, and heed those calls and follow those calls. Because it is people like that that help us, that back then help us have lives like we do today. And we can do our own little part by getting vaccinated to make sure that our children can have just as rich lives as we did.